Imagine you're holding two completely different maps of the exact same territory.
Yeah.
You lay the first map on the table, is printed on this heavy, expensive paper, drawn up in the quiet halls of international diplomacy.
And that map shows, clean borders, signed agreements, and neat, logical lines of de-escalation.
Right, but then you lay down the second map, and this one is stained and crumpled, used by the people actually living on the ground. Instead of neat lines, this map shows ancient stone fortresses changing hands, blockaded maritime waterways, and tear gas blanketing civilian streets. Welcome to the Clarin Horatio Daily World Brief for Tuesday, June 2026.
We really do have a massive stack of sources to get through today. I mean, diplomatic wires, commodity market data, satellite imagery, and local court filings.
And our mission is to take all of those conflicting reports and give you a serious, rigorously skeptical look at the day's most critical global developments. Today, we're examining a massive structural disconnect between high-level diplomatic claims and lethal battlefield realities in the Middle East. We'll also cover the resulting chokehold on global energy supplies and a deadly, escalating clash in Kenya over a controversial U.S. military medical facility.
The central issue at stake today is really this dangerous illusion of control. We are watching high-level international negotiations actively mask intense, lethal maneuvers on the ground. When executive agreements and political narratives diverge so sharply from the physical movement of troops, well, civilians are invariably the ones caught in the crossfire.
The most violent example of that disconnect today is playing out in Lebanon, because if you just read the diplomatic statements, you would think the conflict is wrapping up. U.S. President Donald Trump announced that all shooting will stop.
And Secretary of State Marco Rubio proposed a specific, gradual de-escalation plan, which Lebanese President Joseph Aoun has reportedly accepted. That is the first map, the diplomatic one.
But looking at the physical reality, the second map, Israeli troops just executed their deepest ground incursion into Lebanon in over 26 years. They've actually captured Beaufort Castle, which is this 900-year-old hilltop fortress, also known as Kalat al-Shakif.
The tactical significance of that specific location really cannot be overstated. Beaufort Castle is not just some historical curiosity. It sits on a commanding hilltop ridge overlooking much of southern Lebanon and the Litani River Valley.
Even with modern drones and satellite imagery, I imagine controlling the high ground still matters for actual operational control. Right?
Oh, absolutely. Line of sight dictates everything. Controlling that ridge means controlling the electronic warfare space, signal jamming, and the trajectory of anti-tank missiles. The Israel Defense Forces used this exact medieval fortress as a crucial base during their occupation of the region from 1982 to 2000.
And now, Defense Minister Israel Katz has published images showing the Golani Brigade flag flying over the site again, stating the operation is necessary to dismantle Hezbollah infrastructure.
Concurrently, the violence on the ground is actually accelerating. A massive demolition explosion just rocked the Lebanese town of Dabin, while Hezbollah fighters are actively targeting Israeli tanks with missiles in Hadatha and Bayada.
Reading those two completely different maps forces a serious logical contradiction. I mean, if diplomats are declaring a ceasefire in capital cities while military commanders are capturing 12th century strategic ridges and blowing up entire towns, isn't the term ceasefire functionally meaningless here?
It becomes entirely rhetorical, yeah.
It's the equivalent of a fire department declaring a burning building safe because they managed to put out the flames in the kitchen, just completely ignoring the fact that the living room and the roof are actively collapsing.
That's a perfect way to put it. The diplomatic terminology is being utilized to obscure a massive structural loophole. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu confirmed the agreement, but he explicitly carved out the conditions.
Under this framework, Israeli strikes on Beirut will proceed if Hezbollah attacks, and Israeli ground forces will remain operating in southern Lebanon.
Right, so the geopolitical framing from Washington and Jerusalem suggests a pause, a stepping down of hostilities. But the human toll tells the story of an escalating reality. Since this war ignited on March 2, following the assassination of Iran's supreme leader, the cost has been devastating.
The numbers from the Lebanese Health Ministry report 3,433 people killed in Lebanon. Israel reports the deaths of 25 soldiers and 4 civilians over the same period.
The disparity between the political announcement of a shooting halt and the active capture of sovereign territory reveals a deliberate strategy. They are negotiating while simultaneously expanding military footprints to establish new facts on the ground.
And that expanding military footprint on the Lebanese border, it's not existing in a vacuum. It's actively triggering a broader regional standoff that is currently choking off global energy supplies.
Yes, Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi has issued a categorical warning that any Israeli violation in Lebanon is a direct violation of the broader U.S.-Iran truce that was implemented on April 8th.
So he's explicitly linking the survival of a bilateral U.S.-Iran agreement to the tactical events happening right now at Beaufort Castle and the Litani River.
Exactly. And crucially, the Tasnim news agency, which serves as a mouthpiece for Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, escalated the rhetoric by threatening to activate entirely new fronts. They specifically named the Bab al-Mandab Strait at the entrance of the Red Sea.
Threatening a major maritime choke point is far beyond standard diplomatic posturing, especially when you consider the current status of the Strait of Hormuz, which has been effectively closed for 3 months due to the ongoing hostilities. By the way, for more daily briefings, brain candy explainers, and classic audiobooks, visit clarinhoratio.com.
Understanding the mechanics of a closed waterway is essential for weighing the economic fallout here. A strait is not a door you can just lock.
Right, closing a waterway like Hormuz means creating an environment so hostile, utilizing the threat of anti-ship missiles and drone swarms, that maritime insurance premiums become mathematically impossible for shipping companies to pay.
They are forced to reroute around the entire continent of Africa, adding weeks to transit times and burning millions of dollars in extra fuel. The structural fragility of global energy routing is being actively and successfully weaponized through these exact mechanisms.
When 20% of the world's oil and liquefied natural gas is bottlenecked at Hormuz, the cost of global energy rises universally. And this brings us to another stark contradiction in today's source material. President Trump is insisting on Truth Social that talks with Iran are progressing at a rapid pace.
Yet over the weekend, we saw a direct exchange of physical military strikes. The United States hit Iranian military sites, and Tehran targeted a U.S. base in Kuwait.
And the commodity markets reacted immediately to that weekend violence. Brent crude oil jumped almost $5 a barrel, spiking to $97.44, before settling at $95.70. If financial markets, which are built entirely on calculating risk, are reacting violently to these strikes and the 3-month closure of a vital waterway, shouldn't we trust the price of oil over the political posts?
Financial markets do not price in diplomatic optimism. They price in the physical reality of supply restriction. Traders are looking at the failure of the geopolitical guardrails. The diplomatic assurances of a truce, much like the partial ceasefire in Lebanon, have failed to halt the actual exchange of munitions.
So the political narrative of a rapid pace toward a permanent deal is basically designed to soothe domestic anxieties and project authority, while the physical exchange of strikes proves the global economy remains highly vulnerable.
Highly vulnerable to the whims of military escalation at these specific maritime choke points, yes.
That pattern of U.S. strategic maneuvering and the local friction it causes is pushing well beyond the Middle East. We are seeing a distinct, deadly pushback in East Africa, where a different kind of American intervention is sparking domestic resistance.
Right. In the central Kenyan town of Nanyuki, the United States is planning to build a 50-bed Ebola isolation center at the Laikipia Air Base.
The stated purpose of this facility is to treat American citizens evacuated from the current outbreak in the Democratic Republic of Congo. However, this military medical installation has triggered massive protests, tear gas deployments, and the shooting deaths of 2 people.
The human cost in Nanyuki highlights the severe friction generated when major global powers drop foreign crisis management infrastructure into a sovereign nation without securing broad public consensus. The casualties reflect an intense militarized response to civil disobedience.
One victim was shot near the airbase during the demonstrations and brought to the hospital by friends. The other was brought to the hospital by soldiers and was already dead. It's crucial to note Kenya hasn't recorded any Ebola cases, so the local population views this facility as a grave cross-border infection risk.
And they are backed by the National Doctors Union and various government watchdogs, which is moving the resistance from the streets into the formal legal system. The Kenyan High Court officially suspended the opening of the center, citing grave and imminent risks to public health.
The court subsequently extended that suspension while formally ordering the government to disclose the facility's operational details. But I'm stuck on the legal and political mechanics of this situation. If the Kenyan High Court issues a formal injunction halting the facility, who is supposed to enforce that? The local police.
That's the core issue. This is happening at Laikipia Air Base, which is controlled by the military. We are looking at a profound constitutional crisis.
The dark irony here is inescapable. An installation being built entirely in the name of medical safety and biological security has immediately resulted in lethal violence for the local population.
Kenyan President William Ruto is defending the facility, urging Kenyans not to politicize the matter. He described the installation as a mutual agreement and justified overriding domestic concerns by stating President Trump is a friend who has walked with Kenya for 30 to 40 years.
When a president calls a military medical facility a mutual agreement, but the local judiciary and the public are literally in the streets blocking it, isn't that a massive erosion of sovereignty?
President Ruto's defense perfectly encapsulates the tension between unilateral executive power and the judiciary. He is prioritizing an international, top-down geopolitical relationship over the explicit rulings of his own nation's high court and over the physical safety of the citizens protesting in Nanyuki.
And despite the High Court's order suspending the project, aviation experts and local monitors report that military aircraft are continuously seen flying in and out of the Laikipia Air Base to prepare the facility anyway.
Bypassing a domestic legal injunction to drop a foreign-controlled biological isolation unit into a civilian area and utilizing military infrastructure to field it from local enforcement represents a deeply concerning precedent. It demonstrates how major global powers manage their own domestic crises by offloading the biological and political risks onto allied nations.
Examining all the developments from today's sources reveals distinct colliding pressures. We're watching top-down executive agreements violently crash into local, ground-level realities. Whether those agreements are signed in Washington, Tehran, or Nairobi, they're being physically contested by the people who actually have to live with the consequences.
We see this pattern moving from the capture of a medieval castle in southern Lebanon to the closed shipping lanes of the Middle East to a courtroom and a militarized airbase in Kenya.
For those of you wanting to unpack the broader historical tension between executive action and judicial defiance, check out Debate Candy on our website for slower historical context on how these institutional battles usually end.
The events unfolding in Kenya leave us with a deeply unsettling question regarding the nature of power and sovereignty today. When a nation's high court explicitly halts a foreign military medical project, but the foreign military flights keep landing anyway, where does the ultimate authority in that country actually reside?
Thank you for joining us for today's briefing. For more daily world briefs, brain candy explainers, and classic audiobooks, visit claranarratio.com.